Sidechaining is a fundamental mix technique. I'm going to show you how to do it in Reaper for free, of course, because all you need is the stock Reaper compressor, Recomp. It's actually the best and quickest compressor I know of to actually do this. So let's go. I got my beans out the freezer before grinding them. I don't know if anyone else does that, but so sidechaining. Okay, what is it in this context, or what I'm about to show you? I'm going to put a compressor on my bass, but I want that compressor to cause the bass to duck every time the kick hits, because I want it to make way for the kick, so the kick's nice and clear and audible, and the bass moves out of the way. It's a very common mixing technique in all genres, okay? It's used to exaggerated effect in electronic music, where you get that pumping warb bass sound every time the kick hits. But it's not just used for that. It's a fundamental mixing technique you can use in many ways. It's a great problem solver. So, okay, here we have my bass track, and I'm going to put Recomp on there. There it is, Recomp, just the stock Reaper compressor. It's actually the best compressor to do this with. It's so quick and easy. This is my go-to, despite having so many other compressors in my arsenal. So what we have right now, it's nothing really happening, okay? The compressor's not working yet because the ratio is just set to 1:1. Now I'm going to take my kick. I'm going to click on the routing button, and I'm going to send my kick to my bass channel. And on this little pop-up, you can see what channels of the tracks we're routing from and to. And if we just leave it like this, then the kick channels 1 and 2 are sending to the bass channels 1 and 2, which is not what we want. That's just going to duplicate the signal and have the sound of the kick coming out of bass channel as well, which is not what we want. We want to send it to 2 different channels on the bass. So I'm going to change this on the send to channels 3 and 4. So we're not going to hear any audible sound from the kick going into the bass. But that now means that on Recomp, under detector input, I'm going to change this to auxiliary input. That means that instead of the compressor working on the main input, on the input of the bass itself, it's actually going to activate on the input of the kick. So let's play now. You can see here that the signal that the compressor is receiving in the input is the kick. It's reacting to the kick. But nothing's happening yet because we need to bring the threshold down. So let's play the track, and I'm going to bring this down. And nothing's happening still because I need to bring the ratio up. I'm going to bring it up to 4:1. And you can now see that we're getting compression. And if you listen there, you can now hear that every time the kick happens, that bass is ducking, and we can use the attack and release and the threshold and the other settings like the ratio and everything else to change the characteristic of that ducking. So I can really exaggerate it by increasing the threshold. As you can hear here, we have some pretty serious ducking whenever that kick hits. But in this genre, the reason I'm doing it is to make sure the kick remains clear and audible, and that the bass moves out of the way, so that it just keeps the low end less cluttered. Very common mixing technique, and it's not just for kick and bass. Sometimes I'll do it with the snare and the guitars, so I'll have this whenever the snares hit, it might cause my rhythm guitars to duck very slightly so the snare remains clear and audible. Okay, so hopefully that's sunk in, and we can move on to another example. So here I have a vocal. I just wanna love you. You know that is true. So this track was recorded live, so there is a lot of bleed, but I mean, you can hear the vocal. I'm sending it to this reverb. I just wanna love you. And I really like the lush long reverb, but the problem is when she sings a few words in a row, it's all I need of you. The reverb drowns her out. But I want to keep this big lush reverb. What I want to happen is her voice to push the reverb out of the way, to cause the reverb to duck. Now, some reverb plugins have a ducking feature you can use for this, but many of them don't. So we're going to use our sidechaining technique using recomp to fix this, okay? So in my vocal channel or track, I'm already sending to the reverb, of course. And I'm going to blend this in a little bit more. So I'm already sending to the reverb. Channels 1 and 2 are sending to channels 1 and 2. So that's all fine. But we're going to create another send to that reverb. Okay? So let's move these out of the way. Close these up. There we go. This is my reverb channel. So I need to create another send. So drag that up here and send to my reverb. But if we leave it like this, we're just going to get a duplicate of the signal from channels 1 and 2 on the vocal channel to channels 1 and 2 on the reverb track. So just like before, I'm going to set this to send to channels 3 and 4. Okay, and nothing's happening yet. Okay. And then on the reverb, I'm going to add recomp. And I want recomp to be placed after the reverb. Okay? It needs to be placed after the reverb. So we've got the reverb and then recomp. And we're going to do exactly like we did in the previous example. I'm going to switch detector input to auxiliary input. And then I'm going to increase the ratio. And then I'm going to set my threshold. And we can now have a lot more control over the reverb itself and how it interacts with the vocal. People will come So do you hear how that reverb ducks out of the way, comes back in? It's actually quite exaggerated there. Let's turn that down a little bit. So that her vocals are always clearly audible. And when she sings a lot of lines at once, the tail of the reverb isn't going to sort of drown out the actual vocal. Okay, let's turn it off. Turn it back on. So we still have that lovely lush reverb, but it's moving out of the way. And of course, you just need to adjust it to how you want it to sound by adjusting the threshold, the attack, release. Start with those controls so I can slow down how fast it recovers, the attack, actually think that sounds just fine to me. This is something a lot of people miss when they're mixing vocals, and they slap a reverb on, and that reverb starts drowning out the vocals, and it just doesn't sound very nice, but yet you want to keep that nice lush reverb in there. If the reverb plugin you're using doesn't have a duck knob, this is what you can do. So it's another example of sidechaining, and I do it every time I mix vocals. I will always do this exact technique on my reverb. Let's look at one more thing using FabFilter Pro Q. Okay, so we're going to use FabFilter's Pro Q4 in this example to do something a little bit more sophisticated, using the dynamic EQ function it has to only duck a certain part of the frequency range of the bass. I'll show you what I mean. So here we are back on that first track, and I'm going to route the kick down again to the bass just like we did before. I'm going to send it from channels 1 and 2 of the kick to channels 3 and 4 of the bass, and then I'm going to add, instead of recomp, I'm going to add Pro Q, which is the Q button on my keyboard because I use it so much. And there we go, there it is. In Reaper, here's how you set it up. Up here, you want to open the connector pins of the plugin instance, and you see here we've got track channels 3 and 4. We want to make sure that channels 3 and 4 are being routed to the plugin's sidechain channels 1 and 2, and that'll ensure that the plugin is now receiving channels 3 and 4 to the sidechain channels. So make it look like that, basically. Close that up. And then in Pro Q, we can put a dynamic node in. So make dynamic. As you can see here, it's dynamic, but it's not yet acting on our kick signal when that comes in. So to do that, down here, click here, and there's a little tiny button, the external sidechain button. Click that, and you can see whenever our kick happens, now this band is working, and we can really duck it like that. We can make this a low shelf, so whenever my kick hits, it's activating this specific band in Pro Q, and I can do another one as well. So let's say I wanted it to, I've got the highs up here, but I wanted it also to duck this little range here. Do the same thing again, make dynamic, activate the sidechain, so I've got two bands being affected by the kick. So it's very powerful. Without it, and with it. Okay, 3 ways to sidechain. I hope this really helps you, and until next time, see you later.